I'm the Chair of General Government Committee. We have quorum. I'm calling meeting 5 to order. Welcome, everybody. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. The meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we're meeting in different locations today, Community Council would like to acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Ashwabi, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. It's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. If you're registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the General Government Committee link at toronto.ca/council, clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials, toronto.ca/council, and on CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need them with your devices. I also want to remind you to submit and approve your motions by email, and staff are available at ggc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If there are, if you do have an interest, please raise your hand, unmute your mic, and indicate the item and the nature of the interest. Seeing none, we will proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of our last meeting on May the 30th, 2023? Moved by Councillor Holyday. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So let's run through the items on the agenda. Before we do, I just wanted to take this opportunity. There's a rumor circulating we're getting a new mayor, and usually with that brings a cabinet shuffle. So I wanted to use a couple of minutes to thank everybody for the honor of serving as chair of the Government Management Committee. I wanted to thank my councillor colleagues. Although we had some tough moments, the debate was lively and we got a lot done. I wanted to thank the public service for their wonderful work in supplying us with the advice and expertise that we need to run a complex organization. I'd like to thank the clerks, Matthew and Anita, for their wonderful support. And of course, they have other staff back there. And Julia Scully, of course, thank you very much for your support over the years and the knowledge that you bring to this committee and to the city as a whole. And I do this now because I know some people leave once the order paper is adopted. So I wanted to make sure everyone got the thank you from the chair, and it's been an honor to serve in this role. So thank you very much. Item 5.1, GG 5.1, apportionment of property taxes. That's a timed item, and we'll hold that to 9:45. 5.2 is also a timed item, 9:45, and we do have a speaker on the item. 5.3, amendment to purchase order, Clearway Construction, micro-tunneling boring machine on Old Mill Drive. I will hold it if nobody else wants to. Okay. There was a whispering request. We might go on camera on the issue. 5.4, amendment to non-competitive blanket contract for the Canadian Red Cross Society. Councillor Bravo is holding that item.
And Mr. Chair, I have to step out from 11 till noon for a meeting. I'm hoping that you can hold that until
we will try and be efficient.
A motion. Thank you.
And you do have a motion. If you advance circulate, that would speed things along as well. Okay. GG 5.5, request for renewal of master services agreement with Salesforce Canada Corporation for cloud-based services and to amend non-competitive blanket contract. Held by Councillor Perks. .6, contract with Kone Inc. for escalator maintenance and repair work at Union Station. That's great. They should go over to the bay at Yorkdale because all their up escalators were not working yesterday, and it was quite the workout to get to the men's section. Yeah. Anyway, Councillor Holyday has moved the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.7, contract with our Courier for the provision of courier services for the distribution and transportation of vaccine and non-medical supplies for Toronto Public Health. Anyone want to hold the item? No? Would you like to move it? Councillor Chang? Moved by Councillor Chang. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. .8, award of negotiated request for proposal, Enterprise Rent-A-Car Company for supplying various rental vehicles. Anyone like to hold this item? No? Councillor Perks, would you like to move it?
$7.5 million in cost avoidance.
I didn't know we rented cars to this level. Moved by Councillor Perks. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.9, Atlas Constructors for sale, state of good repair for Scarborough Gardens Arena. And this is Parks, Forestry, and Recreation. Anyone looking to hold the item? No? I will move it. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.10, amendments to Municipal Code Chapter 217, Records, Corporate. Looks like a procedural clerical function. Moved by Councillor Holyday. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.11, Toronto Fire Department Superannuation and Benefit Fund Funding Valuation Report as at December 31st, 2022. I will move the item if nobody wants to hold it. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.12, Occupation, Health and Safety Report, end of year 2022. Anyone want to hold it? No? Okay, it's for information. We'll move receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. City building objectives for the sale and transfer of city-owned real estate. This was also here for informational purposes.
Mr. Chair?
Held?
Actually,
it cannot be.
This came in response to a request I made of staff, and if I could just say 2 words, then we can let it go.
Sure, it's for information purpose. It can't be amended or debated, but go ahead.
So this came out of a concern that I and other members of this committee had that we need to actually articulate what city building objectives are, that it was too loose, frankly. And I want to compliment the staff on actually articulating some more specific tests that we can use. I do want to say, though, that I don't think that's the end of the conversation. I think that in the circumstances we find ourselves in, where there's a homeless crisis, where we've had the province of Ontario take away the major funding sources for the infrastructure to support new housing, I think we're going to have to keep an eye on this question and maybe even turn it on its head and ask, what are the city building objectives in acquiring new lands? So thanks to the staff for this, but it's going to continue to be a conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. And I assume you're move it. Moved by Councillor Perks. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.14, emergency repairs to raw water valves at FJ Horgan treatment plant. This is for informational purposes. I'll move the staff report. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.15, corporate real estate management update on cleaning services.
Mr. Chair, I'm online.
Yes, Councillor Fletcher, we do see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, I wouldn't hold this. I'd like to ask to be held, but I don't think I need to. I think the staff have done, if I can, for 2 seconds, please say that they've done amazing work working with 79 and getting back on track to having full-time staff or full-time hours. And I know they're not posting things until August because it is the summer and everybody's busy, but I know that I'll be back making sure that all of those things have been fulfilled at that time. They've been very responsive and very helpful, and I just wanted to say thank you. I'm going to be going to another meeting. As much as I love your committee, James, I'm going to another committee meeting this morning.
It does get
But I don't-
lonely. It does get lonely here, but I
Does it
do
get-
appreciate you visiting for a short time.
I do visit, but I just have my 2 cents on the boring machine. Leave it there. When you dig up ancient Rome, we see all the things they're finding, and someday somebody will find that. But other than that, if it's possible.
No, that's interesting advice, certainly fiscally responsible, and maybe in 1,500 years, they will dig it up and find it.
Maybe. So I'm hoping, Mr. Chair, you'll ask that question for me because I'm not there. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Fletcher, and I agree. Thanks, staff, very much for working hard on the cleaning services issue, resolved, I believe, to everybody's satisfaction.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to say a quick word, just to say I think this is a really good news day on a really good news item for the City of Toronto. It's wonderful to see staff working this way and with our partners in labor and making whole a bunch of workers who are some of the lowest wage workers at the City of Toronto. So I really want to compliment and congratulate the effort of staff. And I also think it's worth saying that we should thank Councillor Fletcher for her role in all of this, for following this this file so carefully. So with that, I would love to move the report.
Okay, any other comments on the item? Okay, we can move it right now. Councillor Bravo? Removing receipt? Yep, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I think we can go to the first timed item. It's 9:40.
Not item 16 and 17. Oh, yeah, let's finish the, there's 2 more items on the, you're, sorry, clearly missing a few pages. Items 15 and 16. Yeah, 16 and 17. I got it here to you, James. I don't think they're contentious. 16 and 17.
Thank you.
Use that.
All right, there were actually 2 more items that we have to consider whether to hold or not. Item 16, amendment purchase with Sanscon Construction Limited for reconstruction of the King Street West, Queen Street West, the Queensway, Roncesvalles Avenue intersection. Would anyone like to hold the item?
This is your 16, the secondary construction.
You can handle the complaints through the construction period, I'm sure.
Yeah, I could handle it a year ago when we were supposed to have been. If one of you can.
Okay, I will move it on behalf of Councillor Perks to take the heat off. All those, it's item 16, it's a purchase order for some construction on a series of streets. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 17, purchase order with Candevcon Limited for contract administration of the Port Union Road widening project. Anyone like to hold the item? I will move this as well. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Vice Chair, for that good rescue on item 16 and 17. Okay, so I think we can go back to the top of the agenda, 5.1. It's a timed item, 9:45. There's no deputations on it. Questions for staff? Speakers? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All-
There's an amendment. This is from the controller, so they always. It's a technical motion, so it's something staff give us to adjourn. So
Okay.
Councillor Holiday.
So we do have a technical motion. It is on the screen. Councillor Holiday, if you feel comfortable to move it. If not, I will take carriage of it. It's okay. It's a technical amendment from staff. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 5.2, cancellation, reduction, or refund of property taxes. We do have a deputation on this item, Spiros Plessis. So on the last item, we moved the motion. We didn't do the item as amended. All those in favor, item is amended. Opposed? That is carried. 5.2, deputation on the item, Spiros Plazas. I hope I said that correctly. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much for joining us. You have 5 minutes. Go.
Okay, I'm here because I don't understand why I'm paying tax. I'm paying taxes for a property that is not available. I already paid for the last 2 years. I'd like to enlighten me why I'm paying the taxes. It's for 2 years, the place is burned down. Well, I'm here to understand why I'm paying taxes for the last 2 years and the place is not available. It's burned down. I'd like you to give me explanation why I invest all this kind of money for the taxes for 2 years without use for it. If you have an answer for it, that would be fine. If you throw me back into the people that they adjust the taxes, I don't trust them because if it's a place has been done something, they're right there to increase the taxes. But if the place is not there, they're never there to give me the refunds. And they give me a couple of pennies a day, 75 cents a day, I believe, for the last 2 years, so about almost $30,000. Let's say the two combines about $50,000 property tax that they already pay. So I'd like the committee here to give me who is controlling those people to holding my money back.
Well, I think you'll like the outcome of the staff recommendation, which approves your appeal. Are you finished your comments? I think you will like the outcome of today's proceedings. That's about all I can say, where your appeal has been approved. According to staff recommendations, the committee has the final word.
Okay, but this is what I'm trying to say. What is your power there to control these people? Because they gave me some kind of rebate out of the $50,000, about $5,000 rebate. With the place is not existed, there's no business operating, and there's no building is there because of fire. So it's on an empty lot. Empty lot, let's say, this will be around a few $1,000s a year. Because
All right, so what will, if your deputation is finished, what will, the next stage of this item is questions for staff. So we will ask them to try and explain the situation, which ideally would help answer your questions.
That would be good.
Yeah. Oh, there are questions for the deputant.
The address. His address.
63 Danforth Road.
Okay. Yeah, we're not launching an investigation now.
No, I don't-
Staff have done their work. It's a favorable outcome for you, I believe. unless committee decides otherwise. Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any more questions for the deputant? No? Thank you very much. I encourage you to sit and listen to the deliberation on this item.
Will be appreciated.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions for staff? Yeah, Councillor Holiday.
Just as a follow-up to the deputation, could staff tell us the situation for 63 Danforth Road? I see it on the report.
Hi, how can I help? I didn't hear the question.
Could staff just tell us the situation for 63 Danforth Road? I see it on the report, and I see some numbers there. Could you just walk us through what this report before us proposes?
Sure, no problem. So the applicant submitted an application to Revenue Services on February the 16th seeking relief under provision 323 for damage by fire or demolition or otherwise.
If you could sit and
Oh, sit?
lean into the mic, that we can hear you a little better.
No problem, no problem. So the application was submitted to Revenue Services under provision 323 1D under demolition for a period of January 22nd to December the 31st, which is 344 days. MPAC has reviewed their application and has provided an assessment reduction, removing the building portion of the assessment, which at current state, the assessment value is $1,136,000 and will be taxed at a vacant land commercial amount. So the taxes that are attributed to the property at this time is reflective of a vacant land value.
Generally speaking, we, just correct me if I'm wrong here, but we charge, the city charges taxes based on the information provided by MPAC. In this situation, an application was made last year for a reduction in the assessment value because there was a fire. And this report before us approves a reduction. And I think the number in this report, if I've got it right, is a reduction of $4,989.97.
That's correct.
But the owner of the property will still continue to pay some taxes because it's vacant land. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Any other questions for staff?
Just to make sure that all the information's out, vacant properties are still taxed. We don't just tax properties that have buildings on them, correct?
That's correct. Vacant land is taxable.
Thank you.
Well, okay.
Okay, just a couple of quick questions. How much did this property owner overpay and for how long?
The relief period was granted from January the 22nd to December 31st, 2022.
And they obviously won't get the 100%, as Councillor Perks correctly pointed out, there are taxes on vacant lands, so they will
Absolutely.
not get 100% of what they paid.
That's correct.
But you mentioned a figure earlier. Could you just make it clear to the property owner what he is expected to get back?
Sure. 1 second. Let me just do a quick calculation. The refund amount, the relief amount will be $4,989.97.
Not really. Okay, so I'm done with questions. The appeal has been approved. The amount has been identified. Obviously, this was a long process for the property owner. It looks like it's finally before us for resolution. I would move the staff recommendations to refund these monies. And that's my speech. Yeah, and we would move a technical motion, which I'd be happy to put on the screen, but if there are other speakers on the item? Okay, so Okay, so we are approving your appeal. And through some technical wording, I am asking my committee to support the motion I am moving. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Congratulations, you've won your appeal. Yeah. Okay, item number 3 is the retrieving a micro tunneling boring machine on Old Mill Drive for under basement flooding protection program. This is back to us for a second time. I held the item, but I'll open it up to questions for. Okay, well, we could start, and when he comes back, he can ask lots of questions. So, Councillor Holiday, I can see you're chomping at the bit there for questions. So why don't you start off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that this particular file, this report received a lot of media attention, and I wondered if staff could just walk us through what happened, because it was already at committee once before, and it's back again. Could someone explain to us what the report is asking and how we got here?
Yes, through you, the chair. Thank you for the question. Okay, this is part of the basement flooding protection program works, and as part of that, a segment of the Old Mills Drive from Riverside to Bloor was to have a storm sewer constructed by way of a boring machine through tunnel, and it's about 282 meters long, and it's to house a 900 millimeter diameter storm sewer. So work commenced in March of 2022, and it was anticipated that it would be completed by April of 2022, so it was supposed to be a month. During that time, as work progressed, it ran into a bit of a problem, and about 7.5 meters away from the exit shaft, it became stuck, and then it deviated from its course of the tunnel. And so what we ended up doing was having an investigation. The contractor was asked to take a look at how best to deal with it, along with the consultant. And they entered what was determined was that from the exit shaft, which was about 7.5 meters away, they were gonna go in there and hand mine a tunnel to extract the TBM, the tunnel boring machine, so that the construction of the pipe could be completed. So we did go through a review of several options, and at that time, the extraction method was deemed as the optimal option. So as work progressed, in May, the work started, the hand mining, and sometime in June, the contractor encountered the steel tiebacks within the alignment of the recovery tunnel, and so we realized at that time that there were some issues that is beyond what was envisioned in the beginning. And we also discovered that there were a number of steel tiebacks in the tunnel. And in addition to that, there was, during the hand mining operation, it also disturbed the ground and also found that there was groundwater entering into the voids in the subground, and ultimately it started to create some sinkholes. So that was deemed as an emergency. So what we did was that we asked the contractor to retain a subcontractor to take a look at how best to deal with that, to stabilize the ground, and also so that we can resume the extraction and then the construction of the sewer, of the storm sewer. So that was, a non-negotiable contract was entered into. That was in November, And what we ended up doing was in March, we came back with an information report to advise the committee that there was that agreement that was entered into for this emergency work. Subsequent to that, in April, we were advised that there was additional complications with the retrieval process and that there was additional ground instability and it needed to be, and it was to be extended. So through consultation and discussion with the contractor and the consultant, we were advised that at this time, it would be requiring $16 million in addition to complete the work, and that we deem that as the envelope that's required to complete the work, and any of the payments that's to be made would be validated and would be based on our assessment.
Thank you. There was a comment earlier in the meeting that, should just leave the tunnel boring machine there. I wondered if you could explain to the committee, why the efforts are being made to dig around this thing and why this work is before us.
Yeah, so through the chair, when we first encountered this problem, what we did was that we worked with the consultant and the contractor, and we looked at several options on how to deal with this, how to mitigate this, one of which was the hand mine and microtunnel, and the other one was to construct a vertical shaft at where the location was, where it was stuck. And then the third one was take a look at leaving the microtunneling machine where it was and then redesigning it to deviate, to come up with a different route. And that was the highest cost option. So as a result, we just took that off the table. And the lowest cost option at that time was the going in through the exit shaft.
Vice Chair Holliday. Councillor Perks?
Yeah, just a couple questions to maybe help make it even more clear. So this is a basement flooding project, and you needed to build a sewer pipe or a pipe so that basements wouldn't flood. If we left the tunnel there, we would still need to build a new pipe somewhere else, which means we'd have to go back and start all over again with a new construction somewhere else. That would mean design, that would mean all the work gets done, and you'd still have to stabilize the ground around the micro tunnel boring machine, right?
Through the chair, you're correct, Councillor Perks.
Okay. And the specific work that we didn't know last time, but is in front of us now, is while we were trying to remove the micro tunnel bore, or the contractor was trying to remove it, because this is a flooding area, the rain in the area was destabilizing the soil and making it impossible to do the work safely.
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor.
So we have had to get the contractor to go in and literally pour cement pillars into the ground so it doesn't collapse around the workers who are trying to finish the work. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's one way of looking at it, but yes, it's through the compaction grouting. What it essentially did was create a shell around the tunnel, and then the second step was jet grouting, which is to be a little bit more precise so that it could stabilize the ground.
Yeah, I used a little shorthand for the non-technical. And the last time this item was at committee, just to remind people, I did ask staff to go back and give us a report either later this year or early next year, generally on the issue of how we do locates, so that for this construction project and several others that we've had where we're experiencing problems like this, we can make the city's processes tighter and contractors who are providing us design work do a better job, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. That work is underway, and we expect to be coming back to the committee by the end of the year.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Councillor Cheng?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just wondering, I saw in one of the reports that after this is all done, that legal will look back on this and see if there's a cost recovery opportunity. Is there any indication at this point that we see errors were made and where insurance would perhaps cover some of these costs?
We have to be careful about being in camera, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and I was
Yes,
just
no,
going to
we're-
advise the same.
Yes, no, that, a general question about recovery efforts is okay. If we're getting into process, then it has to go in camera.
I think
What I
we.
can say in general is obviously that work is underway. Legal's intimately aware of this file now and really engaged in it and exploring all issues in order to come to a proper opinion for the committee and for council at the appropriate time.
So we're not just waiting till everything is said and done, that work is already underway?
That work is underway. Obviously, some of the answer will depend on all the facts we discover. The machine is still on the ground, but obviously we are engaged and working on it now.
Okay, and the total value of the machine, what is it?
Through the chair, the machine is estimated at around $3 million.
Okay, but we don't want to start all over again, which is, right. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have a couple of questions here. What was the company that was doing the original contract for basement flooding work?
The work was commissioned to Clearway.
Okay, so Clearway was doing the basement flooding mitigation work, and this occurred under their watch. Have they then received this contract to retrieve the boring equipment?
So the boring work was, it's under the same contract, and it was subcontracted out to Earth Boring, and it's through Clearway.
So I just want to understand this. So the original basement flooding agreement was to do the basement flooding was Clearway through, I guess, I don't know, Stantec engineering report or whatever, some environmental assessment. And then it came to council, we gave it to Clearway. Clearway had this sort of, I guess, catastrophic engineering challenge, and then was given the contract to bring it out.
So WSP is the consultant that is doing the work, who's managing this, and Clearway is the contractor who is doing the work. And through Clearway, we have asked them to do this emergency work as well because they were already on site, and this is part of the contract which we just amended.
Okay, so the same company that was in charge during this accident is the company that's being paid to fix it. Is that? I'm not trying to be difficult, but that's the way it's written here.
So we've asked them to mitigate the problem, and at the end of the day, there is still that assessment process to reconcile the cost recovery.
Okay. All right. Now, there was a request earlier, and maybe we can hold this item down to go in camera. No need?
Sorry,
Everyone,
Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm back on your screen. I left
welcome back.
the other meeting. Thank you. And I wonder if I could just have my question, and maybe you asked it already, but I didn't hear it.
Yes,
I'd like to.
Councillor Fletcher, go ahead.
The other option could be or should be to simply leave it there. What are the opportunities to simply leave it below ground?
So through the chair, at the outset, there were 3 options that were looked at when we encountered this problem. And one of the options was to just leave it there and to redesign the tunnel, the sewer, but it was the most costly option, and it's also, it would be the most time-consuming. So we would have to go back and redesign, and we would have to retender the work. So that was not a viable option, and at this point, I think it would further delay the program and the project, and at this point, I don't think that's a viable option because
You're
we're
not recommending it, okay.
Yeah.
And then just, I guess, the options, I guess the Clearway would have insurance, more than likely. I would assume that all of our vendors have ample insurance to cover these kinds of things.
So I'll answer just generally that obviously in all contracting relationships, we do require our contractors to have insurance, and I wouldn't want to answer any more details specific on this one without going in camera.
Might be good to know what possibilities are there. Anyway. Does this go to council at all?
No, it's, it will go right off to staff, once it leaves this committee. We can entertain a motion to send it to council if you want a more fulsome debate.
No, I'm just looking at the insurance capacity and these kinds of freak things. If somewhere along the line, what that looks like, Mr. Chair, which I know is the camera thing, but.
If I could have the Chair's permission just to elaborate, obviously when the city solicitor reports back on the legal impacts of this matter, we will include, of course, a discussion of any ability to recover through insurance.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, I didn't say it at the beginning, but I don't know what the future brings, but you've done a very good job chairing this committee, James. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
I've visited
Councillor
many
Fletcher.
times.
That's most gracious. Thank you. No, always good to have you as a guest at our committee.
No, always well run and very fair, so thank you.
All right, well, something tells me we haven't heard the last of this, so I need a motion to move receipt, adopt, sorry. Oh, okay, your speakers.
Thank you. I'd be happy to move receipt. I just want to spend a minute on this because clearly members of council, like members of the public, are looking at this with shock and concern. We have had two related items over the last few months come to this committee. The first was to acknowledge that we had already required staff to do some extra work here. We dealt with that a couple of months ago. And the second was this issue of these integrated contracts for the basement flooding program. You recall, Mr. DiGeronimo and I had an exchange about whether these integrated contracts were design, construction, and evaluation were integrated into single contracts. And I expressed concern at that time, and staff are doing work, and Mr. DiGeronimo and the head of purchasing are coming back for a report for our consideration on whether that's the right approach. When we dealt with that first report on this specific item, we also, if you recall, directed city staff to do a couple things, to get the city solicitor's eyes on this, to figure out where the liabilities lay and cost recovery and all of those different options. And secondly, to look at the city's processes for when we design a piece of work, how the locates for all the underground infrastructure are done. So we've already set in motion the two pieces of work to make sure that this kind of problem doesn't keep happening. This committee's been very good on that. This specific piece, as you heard from staff, we really are out of options. We can't abandon it. We have to do something to stabilize the soil one way or the other. And we don't want that area to continue to flood, so we have to get the flood mitigation piece in place. And the only way to do that, or the least expensive way to do that, is to remove the microtunnel boring machine. I will tell you also that since these problems emerged last September or August, city staff and my office have established a process of meeting with the community every couple of weeks virtually, doing walks on site with the contractor, city staff, and members of the community. Any of you who've been by Old Mill Drive will know that there are literally just a huge encampment of construction workers there, trying desperately to get this done, and it is really inconveniencing the community. Emergency vehicles, you know, we have to have flag people on site in case an emergency vehicle needs to get into one of the condominium towers there. People's driveways have been blocked for months and months. It is a mess. And city staff have really stepped up to communicate with the community, to make sure that all of these technical details which we're going over here are understood by the people who are being impacted, to get the contractor to be accountable for the work they're doing now to try to deal with this, and investigating the ultimate causes of the problem so they don't happen. I don't want anyone to leave the room thinking that city staff have done anything but 110% on managing this crisis since it started. They have been smart, cooperative, communicative, and incredibly helpful to the community once this problem was discovered. And we are going to get to the bottom of it. So I ask you to support the recommendation here and assure you that not only my eyes are on it, but we're getting future reports on this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Holiday?
Just a point of order, Chair. There was a mention of a receipt of the report, but just to be really clear, we're adopting staff.
Yeah, we're moving staff recommendation. That is correct. Any other speakers on the item? Okay. Does the local councillor want to move it? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 5.4, held by Councillor Bravo. It's amendment to non-competitive contract with Canadian Red Cross Society. And I understand you have questions for staff?
I'm not quite ready for this one. I'm sorry. I'm still working on my amendment.
Well, you don't need your motion till you speak. Okay, so Councillor Perks will start with questions for staff.
So I'm not sure who's here. So this is to extend an arrangement we have to book 70 hotel rooms for refugees. That's what we're being asked to consider?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is what's being considered here.
Okay. There's been considerable interest in the broader community about what's happening when refugees arrive in the city of Toronto. Could you just paint us a picture about whether we have capacity, what the system looks like, anything like that?
Mr. Chair, when the Ukrainian refugees enter the city, the first 2 weeks that they are here, they are put up in a federal hotel. From that time, if they are not able to find housing or secure further housing themselves, then they can be referred to our system, which is those 70 rooms, and it's about 185 people. They're with us for approximately about 40 days on average. So that's usually the process for the Ukrainians. There is no capacity in our shelter system with respect to the 9,000 spaces that we currently have to add to that.
So just to understand that broader context, right now, the City of Toronto is paying not just for this hotel, but for shelter beds, for other hotel rooms, for a whole suite of services, supports to people, and that traditionally, with some small exceptions, the cost of dealing with refugees arriving in Canada is constitutionally a federal responsibility.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct, Councillor. We currently have a 1,500-bed dedicated shelter system that we run for approximately $100 million. And annually, we are projecting another 1,000 refugee beds in our base shelter system at a cost of approximately $60 million that we're projecting. And the city budgets for about 500 beds in the shelter system for refugees at a cost of around $30 million. And all of those beds are filled.
So altogether, we're north of $160 million this year in costs that would typically, in the constitutional arrangement of this country, be federal costs.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are projecting about $157 million that we are requesting from the federal government for the refugee costs that were historically provided under the IHAP program by the federal government.
Okay, and at present, so there's the people coming into the refugee and shelter system, and then there's our work done to try to get them out of that system and into housing. Do we project that there's housing available for everybody coming into this system?
Through you, Mr. Chair, right now, for every refugee that leaves the shelter system into more permanent housing, there are 2 new arrivals.
And eventually that capacity for housing outside, that capacity for people to leave the system gets full and the whole thing just backs up. That's a future we could see.
That is correct, Councillor.
Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Holyday, then Councillor Cheng.
Thank you. I want to understand maybe the detailed mechanics of how this works. So just correct me if I'm wrong on these statements. People arrive into Canada from various parts of the world, and I guess they land in Pearson Airport. And do they make a declaration there that they are refugees, or how does it trigger to begin?
So through you, Mr. Chair, there are a number of ports of entry where a refugee claim can be made, and true, most of the ones that are entering our shelter system are making that declaration at Pearson Airport, but they can come in through other ports of entry and make a declaration similar to that. With the changes that the federal government made with the safe third country, we are no longer seeing to the same degree the irregular border crossers that were previously happening.
Okay, so people arrive, and what do? Do they go to a border security officer and say, I'm making a declaration that I'm a refugee, and then what happens from there?
From there, my understanding, Councillor, is that the application is taken and then a referral is made for them to come to our shelter system.
So this is the part I want to understand. So at some point, they make a declaration that they're a refugee. They may or may not need shelter services. They might have a place that they're destined to go. And then in the lead-in, I think you mentioned that they go to a federal hotel for 2 weeks. Can you tell me how that works?
Sorry, Councillor, if I wasn't clear on that, that is for the Ukrainian refugees. They go to a 2-week stay in a federal hotel.
Okay, so let's deal with that then. The Ukrainian refugees, they arrive at the airport. When they first arrive, they tell a border security officer that they are a refugee, and then if they are from Ukraine, they would be sent to a hotel. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councillor.
Where is that hotel? I don't need the address, but is the hotel in Mississauga? Is it in Toronto? Is it in Ottawa? Where is it?
It's the Ukrainian refugee hotel
Correct.
is
Yep.
in the city of Toronto near the airport.
So it's inside the borders of 416 inside Toronto. Okay. And so
Yes.
they stay there for 2 weeks, and if they don't find a place to live in 2 weeks, then what's the handover? Does somebody come by and say, I'm sorry, 2 weeks is over, you need to leave? What happens?
The Canadian-Ukrainian Immigration Services then makes the referral to the Red Cross, and they come into our hotel program.
The Red Cross, so it's a referral. And so do they get referred into our shelter system? Because we've got like a gateway, right? Is it the same gateway that somebody would be referred into our shelter system?
No, Councillor, it's not. It does not go through our central intake. It is a direct referral to the Red Cross for the Ukrainians.
And is the hotel where the Red Cross is operating, is that in Toronto?
Yes, it is, Councillor.
Is it the same hotel that the federal government pays for 2 weeks for them to stay?
No, it is not.
Okay, so they physically move
Yes, they do.
after the 2 weeks. Okay, and so this report here is to continue to pay the Red Cross to house this particular category of refugees.
Counselor. That's exactly what this report is for.
And then do we know how long do they stay in that hotel? And what is the mechanism to join them to the larger housing continuum? Because there has to be an end solution, right? It's- Oh,
Is this going on much longer?
no, I think
You want
that's my
second
last one. I'm
round?
sorry, Chair. I didn't see the time.
Yes, so that did include some other things. So anyway, you're pretty well done, aren't you? And I think, did Councillor Chang, did you have questions on this item? Yes, okay, so Councillor Chang.
Thank you. I just want to also ask some clarification questions. So we're looking at $15 million to cover what period of time? Is this July 1st to the end of this year?
This was, the $15 million refers to the cost from June of 2022 to December of 2023.
So what is the added ask right now?
The ask in this report is to amend the existing contract by $10 million.
And the 10 million covers what period of time?
It covers the balance of 2023,
From which date?
January 1st.
So we're covering money we've already spent.
Through the chair, yes, Councillor.
And at what point did we decide to create a support to fill in a gap that the federal government is creating by limiting their housing to only 2 weeks?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that that decision was made last April of 2022.
Has there been any discussions with the federal government to ask them to expand and their program in order to cover something that we're not supposed to be covering in the first place?
Through the chair, yes, Councillor, we have had numerous conversations and have provided financials to the federal government covering these costs and outlining all of these costs, including the $157 million that we've talked about.
So the intention of the federal government is to just support this specific group of people for 2 weeks and then hand them over to the City of Toronto.
For those that can't find permanent housing or more permanent housing in those 2 weeks, it has been to refer them out to a GTHA and Hamilton response. So other jurisdictions have also been providing response similar to Toronto.
So the Toronto hotel is not the only hotel that's doing this. There's distribution across the GTHA.
There has been, Councillor, since the summer of 2022.
Do you know how many hotels are in other regions are also doing this?
No, I don't have a number on the number of hotels. I believe there's been about 1,000 families and 2,200 people in total who have been supported through the GTHA and Hamilton response.
Versus, so our 181 individuals, but there's over 1,000 that are being supported across the GTHA. Is that what
And sorry, Councillor, through the chair. In total, during that period of time, we have supported about 1,000 people and about 400 families. In the GTHA Hamilton response, it's been about 2,200 individuals and almost 1,000 families. So we are a little less than half of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Any other questions for staff? Oh.
I'm here, Councillor
Yes,
Pasternak.
Councillor Fletcher,
Joined you
yes.
back.
Sorry, there you go.
Thank you. I just wanted, it's a very interesting understanding how this works, and I just want to hear about the Ukrainian refugees coming. They have 2 weeks in a hotel. Is that the same hotel the Red Cross is assisting in, or is that a different hotel?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, that's not. It is a different hotel.
So 2 weeks to that hotel, and then if folks don't have a place, then the Red Cross takes over and they're moved to a different hotel in the neighborhood.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're referred to the Red Cross from the Ukrainian refugee, Canadian-Ukrainian refugee response. It's a community group that makes that referral to the different responses in the different municipalities across GTA and Hamilton. So they do make it directly to the Red Cross for those that are coming into Toronto.
Yeah, I understand. I'm after they've been there for 2 weeks. Obviously, the group gets in touch with everybody. Some people are settled, others aren't. Then what does the Red Cross do on their behalf?
So the Red Cross provides a series of supports, including settlement services, obviously providing temporary lodging, but they also work with them to find.
Yeah, let's just stop at the temporary lodging. Is the temporary lodging the other hotel?
The temporary lodging is the hotel that is operated by the Canadian Red Cross, yes. That is housing the 70
So
families.
there's two
and 100.
hotels.
Sorry,
Okay,
Councillor, if I'm confusing you. There's only one hotel that is operated by the Canadian Red Cross.
And there's one hotel that's the folks, when they first go through customs, they're going to a different hotel for 2 weeks.
That is correct, Councillor.
So we have two sets of hotels. One's just a hotel, probably the federal government. And the paying for those is, who's paying for either of those?
I'm sorry,
hotels?
Councillor, I couldn't hear your question.
Who's paying for either of those hotels? The federal government paying for the hotels for the first 2 weeks? The federal government paying for the hotels that the Red Cross is managing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the federal government is paying for the hotel for the first 2 weeks. We are currently,
Yep.
the City of Toronto is currently paying for the hotel in Toronto run by the Red Cross, and we are seeking compensation from the
Okay.
federal government for those costs.
And we've been paying for that. What's the total bill to date, please?
The total bill to date is estimated to be approximately $10 million.
10 million, the total bill from.
We're projecting,
start.
sorry, Councillor, if I wasn't clear. We're projecting to year end that the total bill will be approximately $15 million.
Okay, thank you. And for regular refugees who are coming in, I heard you say they go to customs, they indicate that they're refugee, and they're given a reference to the shelter system. Did I hear that correctly?
Through the chair, yes, Councillor, they can be given a reference if they are asking at that time where they can find shelter in Toronto. They will be referred to our Peter Street location, our central intake.
I see. So they're being referred by Candevcon services to Peter Street
That is correct, Councillor.
because they're coming in an airport. Is there other, because of the pressure on our shelter system, are they not referring them to perhaps a different shelter in Mississauga, or because that is where the airport is?
Yes,
Or
Councillor,
Brampton?
depending on
I
where
don't
they.
understand why it's going downtown Peter Street.
So, Councillor, it would be necessary. It may be a reference to another jurisdiction if the individual is indicating that that's where they wish to go. So they may be making referrals into Peel or Halton or Durham, if that is what the person is indicating that they would like. We are certainly hearing from our counterparts in those jurisdictions that their shelter systems are also at capacity or in excessive capacity, and that part of what's contributing to that is their refugee response as well.
So have you met with, has the city met, or city managers all met about this issue? Because it's putting a lot of pressure on the shelter system, just in people, but also in money, as we've noticed. So there's two things, just management of the large numbers of people, and then management of the funds that would take to be able to address it. And I'm looking at what level of interaction there's been on a regional basis with, do you happen to know that?
Sorry, Councillor, I don't know the specifics. I know that the city manager is actively engaged and in conversations with the federal government, as well as the deputy city manager and ourselves are meeting with staff at various levels with the federal government on an ongoing basis. As far as the conversations at a regional level, I don't have that detail in front of me.
So you're
Thank
not
you.
aware that they're
Yeah,
happening?
you're-
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
Hey, he got 8 minutes. Councillor Holiday got 8. I saw that. okay.
That one included pauses, so. All right. No, I believe that did roll over from a previous counselor. I have a couple of questions unless others. Yeah, so I just want to focus a little bit on the role of the Red Cross here. Now, we're handing over a lot of money, and they do not own the hotel. I assume they are, out of the monies we give, they are the ones paying this hotel and paying for those rooms?
That is correct, Counselor.
And they are also paying for the various meals and services related. We've farmed out the whole thing to the Canadian Red Cross.
Yes, that is correct, Counselor.
Now, are they entitled to a management fee or something to handle administration, or this goes straight to refugees?
No, there is some overhead costs that they do incur, and they use volunteers, and there are costs associated with the use of those volunteers to provide those settlement services. So they are, part of those fees are recouping those costs.
And this will take us through to the end of the year?
Yes, Counselor, this would give us authority to go to the end of the year, but it doesn't necessarily mean we would spend the entire amount.
All right. So my next question is for finance, because there's a sentence at the end of the report, or at least on page 6 of the annotated agenda, and it says, it is important to note that use of the city's emergency provisions, which we're doing today, will fully exhaust the city's one-time backstop strategy, which will mean funds are no longer available for other ongoing commitments, COVID-19 impacts, or service delivery in 2024. I don't know if anyone from finance is here to really explain how cryptic this is.
So, Councillor, I can try. I'm not sure if Steve Conforti is on the line. He may want to provide his comments. So I think this paragraph is just making it clear that the refugee response requirement is, as has been mentioned, a federal responsibility, and the city cannot continue to sustain this type of expenditure. As has been indicated previously, the use of our COVID backstop funds will be exhausted within 2023 and 2020, and will not be sufficient in 2024 to be able to continue to fund these expenditures.
So we're running out of money, or we've run out of money.
That's correct, Councillor.
Okay. All right. Are there any speakers on the item? Councillor Bravo, you have your motion, right? Oh, questions for staff. Councillor Bravo.
Thank you, Chair. I first wanted to thank you for the details that you're providing in relation to this item. My questions are around how other municipalities are handling the situation in which a federal policy, which rightfully allows refugees to come, but isn't accompanied with the funding that's needed to shelter them. Do you know how other municipalities are handling this? And I guess the rapid chase on that is my understanding that this isn't just a Toronto problem. It's not a Greater Toronto Area problem, but actually a Southern Ontario problem.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, the other municipalities are indicating that they are having similar challenges to the City of Toronto with respect to the pressure that's being put on their individual shelter systems, and that they are looking for support from the federal government as well.
And in the course of, the kind of the scale of the problem that we're identifying here, where you have multiple cities across Southern Ontario grappling with a similar situation, and of course that it's not just Ukrainian refugees, but people who are currently camped out on the street outside of an intake center here in Toronto, that this has this precipitated any kind of intergovernmental discussions involving the other orders of government, which have a stake in this?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, we continue to meet with the other orders of government, the City of Toronto, the Province of Ontario, and the federal government, and we do continue to raise this issue, the pressure, the concern, and a request to not only have financial support, but also to have other supports that would help us to move people into more permanent housing and to take and get relief for the shelter system.
I've noticed that there's been an escalation of community advocacy. I've been informed, and I believe that there's been continual conversations between City of Toronto officials and other orders of government. Are those meetings proceeding? Are these files being handled in real time as a matter of urgency?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Councillor, they are proceeding with urgency, and we do continue to engage our community partners and agencies who are bringing these issues forward, and we've had the opportunity to bring those community agencies together with the federal government directly.
Sorry, through the chair, Councillor Bravo. Those communications are occurring at the most senior level. That was a question that was being asked at the city manager's office as well as the deputy city manager of community and social services. That's my understanding from speaking to both. I just texted them, Councillor Perks, just to be clear about that. Okay.
Thank you very much for that. So I appreciate hearing that this is a live file and it's an important one, and I'll be reflecting that knowledge in the motion that I move.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Councillor Perks?
To be clear to the deputy city manager, so there will be conversations between now and when this item reaches council?
So through the chair, Councillor Perks, I will validate that exact question you just asked me. And I know that they're nodding to me, the team, but we will validate that and come right back to you.
Sorry?
Sorry.
The question is, will there be questions between now and council? That's what Councillor Perks is asking.
So is our city staff going to be having this conversation with representatives of the federal government between now and when this item goes to council?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our understanding is that there is a meeting scheduled for this Friday.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Are we ready for speakers? Finally. Okay, great. Councillor Bravo has a motion. She's going to speak as well.
Thank you. If you could share that. My motion is to send this report, this item to council without recommendations, and to direct the city manager to seek confirmation of the federal government on funding for programs for refugees and asylum seekers, including shelter provision, and to report to the July 2023 meeting of City Council with an update. My intention with this motion is not centered or seeks to identify any problem with the staff recommendation around this Red Cross contract. The intention of this motion is to indicate that this file is live, that efforts are being made to work with the federal government to ensure that the City of Toronto is properly compensated for expenses that have been incurred in fulfilling duties that are actually, and obligations that are actually federal obligations. The intention of the motion is to ensure that we're sending, or giving an opportunity for conversations to continue, and that when we meet in July at City Council, the meetings that are occurring currently, including, as we heard this Friday, and I hear in a very robust way in the City of Toronto, but also across Southern Ontario cities in particular, that those meetings will come to fruition, and that when we come to this item in July, we'll have that report from the city manager, and we'll be able to, as a council, deliberate in the full knowledge that we're proceeding, and ideally that we are going to succeed, because it's not just about this particular refugee hotel. It's actually about a systemic problem that is hitting every city, every community, and that has to be resolved to ensure that people aren't sleeping on the street, and that they're being treated equitably, because there is a fundamental contradiction here, where we have city funding being used to house one group, and meanwhile, there are hundreds of people who are currently on the street, and in some cases, making their way to encampments, who are refugee seeking, asylum seeking.
I'll take the chair, thank you. Are there any other members wishing to speak? Councillor Parks?
Can you go, Lily?
Councillor Cheng, want to go ahead? Mr. Clerk, can you control the timer? Thank you.
So this is a problem that is not going to be nipped in the bud overnight, and it's only going to increase with global instability and climate change. So if we look at the largest refugee camp in the world, 860,000 people in Bangladesh, there's many countries that are dealing with a very serious crisis. So I think we really need a national and provincially coordinated strategy. This is about long-term funding. It's about long-term infrastructure. It's also about having adequate, affordable housing. In Toronto, it is extremely hard, even for those who have been born and raised here, to survive in our city. So without a pipeline, people are getting stuck in the shelter system, and without that movement of transitioning out, we are going to just have more people on our streets and not less. So I support Councillor Bravo's motion that we have to keep this live, and we have to keep in the pressure on our higher levels of government, and it is difficult for us to close the doors on programs that we are funding when they are not in our jurisdiction, but they address giving dignity to people who are arriving. So I think it's important that we balance how we do this, but I do think at some point we have to transition out of filling in gaps. And sometimes, unfortunately, a pain point has to hit in order for people to realize what is happening. And that, unfortunately, that is happening right now. So it's very difficult to balance this. And we definitely want to be humane, but we have to also put it on at the doorstep of our higher levels of government and have much more coordination than what is happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheng. Councillor Parks?
Thank you. Clock. There you go. Very good. I'll be supporting Councillor Bravo's motion. I've been reflecting on this all week, trying to figure out what the right path for the City of Toronto is. I have been incredibly proud of the community I represent time and again over the last 16 years as we've stepped up to support Syrian refugees, to support Ukrainian refugees, to build shelters in Ward 4, to approve supportive and affordable housing projects in Ward 4. But this problem is much bigger than what any one neighborhood can manage. I have been proud of the City of Toronto for always remembering our obligations under the United Nations Convention on Refugees. I have always been proud of my country as being a place that takes this seriously. But that's wavering right now. My pride in Canada is wavering right now. If I can walk down a street anywhere in the City of Toronto and see someone who is in distress and has no home, I have doubts about Canada's commitment to housing everyone. If I can wander down to Peter Street and see people who've arrived in Canada because it was better to take the risk to travel than to stay where they were, my pride is wavering. The Convention on Refugees that the UN has begins with an acknowledgement that refugees are the most vulnerable people in the world. Right now, Canada is not doing enough. Right now, we're failing. I am encouraged that the city manager and the mayor-elect and members of council have been speaking out on this, and that the federal government has listened and agreed to talk to us this week about this urgent crisis. And I hope that when we get that supplementary report that Councillor Bravo has listed, we will recognize that the issues we're facing are more than simply providing a hotel to, 70 households, 68 households who are fleeing the murderous war that Mr. Putin has launched against Ukraine. But I hope that the federal government can step up and say, Canada does aspire to be its best self. Canada does aspire to meet its international obligations on the Convention on Refugees, that Canada does aspire to make sure that people without homes have access to a first-class shelter system and a pathway to stable housing. These are three things that are intimately linked. You can't solve one problem unless you solve all three. So Councillor Bravo's motion, the intention of it is to make sure that before we settle this one bill, that we are situated in a context of all three problems. The global refugee crisis, which will only get worse as climate change accelerates. Our own crisis of unhoused, which council has voted to say is an emergency, and the particular issue that this hotel was designed to deal with. They're all linked. They all have to be sorted together, and the federal government must take a leadership role here. They must. And I call on everyone in the City of Toronto to turn your minds to this, to ask yourself, does the country that you imagine you live in treat anyone who does not have a home or is fleeing violence or fleeing climate crisis somewhere or fleeing the collapse of a government because of the COVID disaster? Does your country offer them safe haven? And if the answer is no, we need to turn our minds to how to make the answer yes. Thank you.
Any other speakers on the item? No? I'll reserve my comments for council. We'll put the motion on the screen. There we go. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amended. All those in... Okay, that's the item. Item 5.5, Salesforce.com, cloud-based services. Councillor Perks, you held the item down?
Yes. I have a couple of questions of staff.
Okay, question for staff?
Okay, so this is a request to extend a 5-year contract for another 5 years, correct?
Through the speaker, thank you, Councillor Perks. It is a 5-year contract that we will be extending by 5 years, yes.
Okay. And the contract expires at the end of July?
Through the speaker, yes, July 31st.
Okay. So, and this is for, just could you give me a quick narrative of what this contract is for, what it does?
Through the speaker. So what the contract is for a customer relationship management system. What it does is takes in inquiries from the public to many of our services. So it's questions, complaints, requests. It is rolled out to a number of our services so that we have consistency across in how we intake as well as respond.
Okay. And reading through the report, I can't find any evidence that in the year or 2 years as we were coming to the end of this, that we went out and did some kind of market sounding or issued a request for proposals to see if this is still the right vendor for us. Is that correct?
Through the speaker, yes, that's correct. However, there was a competitive bid and analysis that was done in 2018. The solution was rolled out through the last few years. We have been keeping in touch through Gartner and other industry reports to make sure that Salesforce is still the top contender in this category.
Okay, those are my questions. I'll speak to it.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay, speakers, Councillor Perks?
Yeah, this is going to be a very reluctant yes on my part. There are a couple things that are deeply troubling here. One of them is that, what is it today, the 18th? We're in the middle of July, and the contract, it's the 10th. Oh, look at that. I lost a week with all the anxiety. We're in the middle of July, and the contract expires at the end of July. So I really am handcuffed here. If I don't vote yes, we have no software that ties together all of our various customer service, all data management tools. And I never want to be put in that position again. If we're bringing a contract extension, bring it with enough time for council to consider it and have options. Second, I continue to be concerned about whether or not when we do these technology contracts, we get locked in. And by locked in, I mean, do we have rights within the software design? So if we're fed up or done with or can find a better price than a given vendor, that we can easily transfer to another vendor. I don't know the answer to that question because it's not detailed in the report. And while I understand that we did do a market sounding 5 years ago, nobody can persuade me that the technology world hasn't changed in 5 years. So for these contract extensions, I need evidence that we properly have tested the market, either through a market sounding or request for expressions of interests or some other mechanism that demonstrates to me that we are not getting locked in, that we are getting the best price, and that we have done the basic work to prove that. You know, it's like if you're writing an exam, you don't just write the answer down, you have to show your work. And I need these reports on contract extensions to show their work from now on, and to come to us in a way that if the work isn't shown, we have options. I've raised this issue about these technology questions before, and I continue to be disappointed that I'm not getting the kind of report that gives me confidence. I've spoken privately with city staff about this, and I've received some private assurances that this isn't going to continue to be practiced, but, you know, I asked members of the committee to keep their eyes open for these. We have to do better here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Are there any other speakers on the item? Councillor Holyday?
Thank you, Chair. And I really appreciate the comments of Councillor Perks and the concept that he's raised. I think the solution to this, though, is when we make a large technology investment into a system, is that we articulate as best as we can at that point in time that there's a lengthy commitment with the vendor. Even if it goes past the individual contract. And it's to say a commitment, but also a commitment with options to change your mind and so on. So I don't have the original 2018 report in front of me, but I suspect it contains some thoughts that, you know, the staff will be back to the committee increments for non-competitive procurements, because that's part of the overall plan and the overall concept. But I don't have it here, and I can't point to that to say that. But I would only just say I would encourage more of that type of reporting over time, because it's not just the councillors, it's the public. And I too had an opportunity to ask some questions before the meeting of staff, and I had very, very satisfactory answers provided. And I know that I asked questions about these particular licenses before. and received assurances that, you know, this is all part of the idea. As it expands, you go back and you will increase the number of licenses in the system as the number of people grow that use it. So you don't buy them and then shelve them. You grow over time. But I just, the point has been made, it's very good, and we see this from time to time at this committee, whether it's this type of contract or that type of contract, it's how they incrementally come to the committee. And I too get frustrated because I'm left questioning, you know, is this the right answer? And if I say no, we're in trouble. But I think the answer goes back to the root of when we considered the business case to make the procurement, and did we have a longer term vision in mind, knowing that we had exit and off ramps throughout that process. And so any more transparency and simplicity in those reports always help, because sometimes we miss it. Sometimes they come through committee and we realize later we've really made a big commitment, even though the contract value is much smaller. But I will be supporting this report, and I appreciate the value and the utility of this software, and that it is growing as the use grows in the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Any other speakers on the item? Okay. Be happy to move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That concludes the agenda items, but because we had 2 timed items, we do have bills to adopt. So we will put them on the screen. Councillor Cheng, would you take the honor?
I'd like to move that confirmatory bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the General Government Committee acting under delegated authority at meeting 5 on July 10th, 2023, be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Cheng, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So that concludes our business for today. Thank you very much, councillors, clerk staff, city staff. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see many of you at council.